Have you ever failed anyone in one of your classes?
I came so close last semester. Very, very close.
Okay, what happened?
Oh my goodness. I think it had to do with a lot of inattention. I don't know if there was too much going on in the student's life or but it came awful close. We did have a really good conversation saying, "Hey, I really need you to get in here and start participating, being an active student in class, getting your assignments in and your quizzes. We really need to get these going." And after that, I think it was a big wake up call, and it really helped that student. So at the 12th hour, things came out of the basement, and everything was good to go. So
Probably
I was really
literally.
happy. Yeah.
That's good. I remember seeing that in school for mortuary school that sometimes it was a tough to get there for a lot of students, especially if you're working late hours or visitations, and if you're helping out on transfers too, like a lot of students are able to, depending on the state you're in. It's tough to make it there, and you're juggling almost a full-time job with being a full-time student is not an easy thing.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And some of our students also do clinical rotations at the same time. So they're in a funeral home for 8 hours, 1 day a week, in addition to all of these other credits that they're taking, so that they are getting that real life experience in addition. So it's hard to keep up in some aspects. And then if there's anything personal going on, we I don't want to pull that out. Of course, you want to be respectful of that privacy and make sure that we're being as professional as we can and encouraging to that student as well.
That's a great philosophy and mentality, because we're trying to keep our students and groom them to becoming good morticians and quality, because as we talked about before we started talking on the actual podcast, that it's tough to get that talent nowadays, especially for our listeners. This is Kelley Romanowski. She's a professor, teacher. I don't know what you like to call them. Everyone has a different word nowadays.
Teaching specialist.
Teaching specialist at the University of Minnesota. But it is interesting that you have to find that balance. And as a teaching specialist, I'm sure you have to deal with that way more than other professors at the university. Do you ever talk to other professors at the university and like, hey, this is what we're dealing with? Like, how is it different in
Yeah.
other areas of focus?
Oh my gosh, that's so great. And funny enough, I actually have a group of mentors that I'm in a group with, and we text all the time. A handful of folks from California, from Colorado, from so across the country. And okay, how are you introducing this? What are you seeing with your students? Is there a way that you're presenting this material that makes it a little easier for the students to comprehend? And
Yeah.
so I love this. It's almost like a brain trust that we're really talking and elevating some of these concepts or ideas to the students in the best way that we can, so that we are seeing positive change in their education and what they can go out into the workforce with.
That's great. Expanding on what you and I probably learned, back in the day, and
Mhm.
making that better for the student, more relevant to the everyday life, which is the key, because you can only learn so much, inside school doors, so to speak. It's when you get into the industry that sometimes students get smacked in the face and they're like,
Oh,
what have I gotten myself into? So to prepare them at all, any for the better, is huge.
oh my gosh, I was smacked in the face I don't know how many times.
Tell me,
But
give me something that happened when you were first starting out.
oh, good. I can tell you the worst thing that ever happened to me.
Let's go.
I was on a removal at a care center, and it was 5 minutes away from the funeral home.
Bam.
And removal part went fine. The van was out in front of the care center, 3 o'clock in the middle of a afternoon. I think it was during the week. There was a fair amount of traffic going in and out of the care center. I get out, I'm trying to put the cot into the van,
Mhm.
and something happened with the mechanism, and I could
Mhm.
not get the legs to lower going into the cot. So I tried from the inside of the van to bring it into the minivan. I tried from the backside,
Oh,
lifting up and pushing in. And here comes the moment of truth. That was absolutely awful. I gave it one more push and I ripped the whole inseam out of my slacks. And so I'm standing there. People are watching me at this point because they obviously see I'm having some troubles. And
Yeah.
now all of my pants have ripped down from just about
Oh,
my
no.
waist all the way down to my ankle. And now I have to call the funeral home asking for assistance for someone else to please come and help me get the cot into the van to bring it back to the funeral home.
Please
So
bring me an extra pair of pants.
So I wore scrub pants the rest of the day. I was
Oh,
mortified at
no.
that care center for, I think, at least the whole next year, anytime I had to go there. But yeah, that was,
That is, I always like to say, you aren't a true funeral director until you have at least one ripped garment of clothing,
oh
minimum.
my goodness,
I've had
beyond.
so many myself, and it's it's always a treat when it happens. And
Oh,
now it's strictly stretchy clothes. I will not buy anything that has any sort of resistance. I need it to move with me. It's straight to
yes.
like athletic golf material at this point because even my
I,
suits, I'm not kidding. I buy the suits that have the give and the stretch because
ah,
I I don't want to get in that situation with the pant rip situation anymore, or the shirt, or whatever else.
I'm thankful the fabrics have changed over time.
Yes.
But oh, that was, yeah, that was one I would never wish to repeat or wish that on anyone else either.
No, no. I think women have had it so much smarter than men for a long time that they got with the trend of, hey, we can have pants that are stretchy, but they look formal and they look dressy. I think men have just realized in the last like 7 months that that's a thing. And now all the guys are like, oh, you gotta try these pants. Like, dude, look, I could squat in them. Like, you don't have to be uncomfortable.
Oh, flower setups are going to be a breeze. Now, if they'd only
Right.
come up with pockets for women's pants that actually fit something more than a tube of lipstick, I would be just ecstatic about that.
I did.
Casket key length would be perfect.
I did a video one time, and it was a funeral director's pockets at the end of the day. And I go in, I had them stuffed, and there were pens and tissue, an extra pair of gloves in there. I had a casket key. Like it was
Spider
just like a
mom
treasure
petals from,
chest. Yeah, exactly. And that's how it is by the end of the day. Oh, the stickers from putting the funerals or the peels of the funeral stickers everywhere and all
yes.
that good stuff. It's and we need some fair advantage here in between.
Oh my goodness, by all means. Yeah.
Give me a little bit more about the work that you do at the University of Minnesota. What kind of classes are you teaching?
Yeah.
What are you guys doing differently than you think a lot of the other mortuary schools are maybe doing? And we'd love to know some of that stuff.
Oh, fantastic. Great question. So, we're one of a Big Ten, or we're part of the Big Ten college system. So that part's really fantastic.
I
Go
went to Iowa,
Gophers.
so I'm a big
Okay.
tenner myself.
Well, I won't hold that against you. Um,
Yeah, come on now.
and we're the only mortuary school that's based in a medical college, which is phenomenal. We work very closely with the Anatomy Bequest program, which is a deeded body program. And we have the opportunity of having the generosity of those donors so that we can instruct our students with embalming techniques. And then the following day, we have the opportunity of having RA labs as well. So we can work in conjunction with our students. They're able to see the effects of chemicals on those decedents,
Yeah.
and then work on those restorative processes.
And that's when you're actually doing your any RA, any restorative art is the day after or 2 days after.
Yes.
You're not doing it the second or during the embalming process. It depends on the situation, of course, but more often than not, you're waiting for things to settle, to dry, and then you're doing that. What kind of things are
Absolutely.
you doing from a restorative art? Because not everyone is dealing with maybe tumors or facial feature
Oh,
issues.
right,
What are
right.
you doing in those different situations to help students with RA?
Oh, phenomenal. So on occasion, we'll have the opportunity to work with a decedent that may not go on to an additional study. In that event, we do have permission to potentially perform additional restoration procedures. So, in the event of potentially a donor, or in the event of someone who's been autopsied, we can have those opportunities that we may not have with a traditional donor. So we can show all of those intricate sutures that they need to learn
Oh,
and demonstrate those on that tissue, which is we're so grateful for that opportunity. But
yeah,
also in some instances where we might have had perhaps a cut cover that rested a little too long on the dorsum of the nose, and we have a little bit of that
sure.
going off to the
Yep.
side, we can teach some of those restorative techniques using a mouth former, using and yes, I said a mouth former for a nose. There are a couple techniques that I like to share with students.
All right,
um,
let's pause. Let's talk about that so I can use
all
it.
right, yeah, absolutely.
So how are we
So
using a more mouth former from a nose? So for those of you who aren't
yeah,
watching on the camera, Kelley is talking about how sometimes, the nose when you're suturing or after time, it'll have that sort of pinch to the side after time settles, or you have the one of the nostrils that are slightly inward. If am I catching the what you're putting down?
absolutely, you're hitting it right on.
Okay,
So, we know that the minute details make the difference. And
correct.
seeing those, it's the small details. Not every day we're going to be caring for someone with that cranial reconstruction. It's these
So,
minimal things that we can really elevate. So
absolutely.
using something, and I got inspiration from a breathe right nose strip. You put it on the outside of your nose and it
Of course.
lifts and
Yeah, it's
elevates the
stands. Yeah.
nostrils. So
Mhm.
if we were to create something that we could put just along the inside of the nair, that would create that convexity. So looking
Oh,
around, what do we have in the prep room that we can use?
yeah.
We can use a mouth former, and we can cut just a small length, a rectangular shape, and
Okay.
place it around the outer portion of the inside of the nair, and that's going to
Oh,
give that rounded appearance. You can cut it according to shape, so it's going to be perfect for every single person. And if you're perhaps on a kneeler and looking upward, you're not going to see anything inside the nair. So I
wow,
encourage
wow.
MacGyver thinking
Wait,
in
I
IRA
love it.
classes.
I think I fully grasp it because the mouth former has that natural curve to it. Okay,
Yes.
so that
Yeah.
makes sense that it's going to expand. And you're saying you're going to leave it there, like you
So
don't take.
if you have the opportunity of assessing this prior to embalming, you can certainly do that and leave that until the proteins fix, until the
Right.
proteins cross-link with the formaldehyde. Um, in the event that they don't, that is something that you could potentially leave because you're not going to see it. It'll rest,
Oh,
the
yeah.
convexity will rest on the inside of the nose.
Okay. Okay. See,
Yeah.
I was thinking of it. It's going across. Is that the septum? Like, what is it? Right.
So
What's
right inside, where I'm actually talking about on the inside of the nair.
exactly. So
So
that's what
right on the
I was
inside.
getting crossed up like we were talking like a nose ring type looking thing
Oh,
where it would
gotcha.
stab out.
Okay.
Like I hope everyone's watching on video because I'm really getting in deep here. I heard that picking your nose causes Alzheimer's, so I'm trying
Oh,
to
yeah,
cut.
I better watch that. Um,
But so I know what you're saying now. So
yeah.
inside of the inside the
Yes.
nostril, you put
Just
that.
right
So
on the inside of here.
you'd have
Mhm.
one little piece, or if both nostrils are
Yeah,
concave or whatever, you could have two essentially.
absolutely.
Ooh,
Absolutely. So
cool.
little techniques like this that I've learned over, my 20 some years of doing this, that you can impart to the students so that they know that there are things that we can do that will make a difference. It doesn't have to be this extreme large thing, but
Uh-huh.
it's something that's going to help dad look like dad again.
That's the key.
So,
It's those
yeah,
little things, they add up immensely.
truly,
I'm
they
sure you
do.
do like some feature building stuff, things like that. Those are subtle, those are small because you don't want to do too much because obviously you don't want to make it to the extreme. But it's
Absolutely.
those things and doing that, or um, do you do any trying to, like if you have like a very old person with an immense amount of wrinkles, or if they don't have teeth or dentures, you see like all those wrinkles. Do you do
We do.
anything with those? Like I know that we saw once before, which was very different and interesting. I think they either use massage cream or Vaseline, and then they
Mhm.
use either was it a steamer or an iron or some like a mini one, and
Oh,
it would.
wow. Tissue reducing spatula, perhaps?
Yeah, that could have been. That could
Okay.
have been.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
speaking in like very much layman's term.
Oh, no, no,
But,
no. That's
um,
okay.
for do you do any of those type of any of those works?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. We teach them, the first 10 years of my career, I was afraid of that instrument. I
yeah.
was deathly
I
afraid of
still
that
am.
instrument. Yeah. And it took a little bit of confidence and understanding the principles behind it
Yeah,
and when I would utilize that instrument. So from the very first week, we're introducing those experiences. So we're teaching the students to assess that decedent from head to toe.
yeah,
What are you noticing? Is this, do we see a little bit of swelling here? Is this the best body positioning that we could potentially have?
yeah.
And if that opportunity arises, let's bring that instrument out. Let's teach you how to utilize this so that we are presenting the best possible thing that we can.
Absolutely. I love
Yeah.
that. That's really cool. And it gives them the confidence later on in their career. Because I think I saw it one time, maybe when I was in mortuary school in lab. And I was like, I don't want to burn the skin and leave marks. It's scary. And you don't want to do,
Yeah.
sometimes you don't want to do too much because then they don't look
Exactly.
like themselves. But
Right.
if you're going through a program, you're able to do it for cases that aren't going to be seen by their family, and you're able to build up
Mhm.
that confidence and trust in yourself. That's got to
Yeah.
be huge for embalmers careers moving forward.
Oh, it's phenomenal. And,
Yeah,
even with some of those events like tissue building, a
yeah.
lot of that, the very first few times, it's, I don't know if I'm doing this right. I,
Mhm.
I want to make sure that I'm putting this in the correct area, or, where's the best place to go with this? And
That's always
um,
the tricky part.
yeah, yeah. So learning through some of those techniques and even the hands, the visible portions, the hands and the face.
Oh yeah.
We teach them the hidden points of injection and making sure that they're able to identify what those might be in a variety of different circumstances, because everyone's anatomy might be just slightly different.
That's what makes it fun.
Yeah,
Every
I love
situation,
that.
every case
Yes.
is different, and you have to be able to think on your toes. And I mean,
Mhm.
that's why a lot of us are very much in tune with that, and that's what
Yes.
draws us to the profession, is because every case is different, every day is different, every funeral is different, every family is different. So you have to
Yes.
really be able to go with the flow and work with what you're given.
Yes. No, I've used the term MacGyver thinking
Yeah.
a number of times, and some of my more recent classes don't know who that is. So that's I'm taking a stab to the heart on that one. But for the most part, understanding that we don't necessarily have to use this product in this way. We can certainly use it in this way, and it may be beneficial for this technique. So I encourage that type of thinking, and no question is a question that shouldn't be asked, in my opinion. If you have a question, ask me. I can tell you. And I also like to share that you can learn from every single funeral director that you come into contact with, every single one. And it's either this amazing technique, this I learned from them, or I saw this technique. I don't think that's really great. I'm not going to take that away from them. So you can learn from them, or you can learn that you don't want to learn from them. But in any essence, you can learn something from everyone.
I could not agree more.
Yeah.
I come from a family funeral home, and I chose slash had the opportunity to work with a funeral home that actually one of our instructors, I went to Worsham, um, and he was the funeral director there. And he's like, "Do you want to, come be an apprentice?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." And I was able to learn so much from him and the other funeral directors that were there, and then come and learn the wrong way how to do things from my family. Except
Oh
for
my gosh,
dad. I'm
that's
kidding, dad.
amazing.
Everyone else, you taught me the wrong things except for dad. But it's so true that you even if you learn like one, like Kelley, you literally just taught me a trick right now. You taught everyone listening. I've never heard that before. And we've had many guests on. I feel like I'm pretty in tune with things. That's a great tip. And
I
that's
love
why
that.
when we share each other's knowledge like this, it could all elevate our games. And you can pick
Yeah,
what little things that work best for you and have it be part of your repertoire. And then if you see
absolutely.
things that you don't like, you're like, I'm not good with that. I don't want to do it that way. That to me doesn't look right. It's not it's not my best way, then that's good. You learn something, but you learn something that you're not going to add. So
Mhm.
that's is the best way, as opposed to putting all your eggs in one basket and learning from one person. Take in all this
Yeah.
knowledge, learn from people, whether it's listening to podcasts like this, going
Mhm.
and testing out, other trade embalmers, or even on funerals too, going out there
Yeah.
and trying to work with other people, doing some work from other people that aren't in your funeral home is it's imperative. It's imperative
Oh,
to becoming the best funeral director.
100%. And I think that's what we're really excited about in our program. We have the opportunity of placing students not only with us, working practitioners, in the embalming lab, in the restorative art lab, but also when they go out on clinical rotations.
Mhm.
Students are going into working funeral homes where they have the opportunity of working alongside of practitioners. They have a registered clinical card, so they have permission to be in that space and
Nice.
perform work alongside of that licensed professional. So they're developing those skills. They're seeing some of those techniques that they can build upon their skills and keep with them throughout the remaining part of their career.
That's huge. That's so nice that you're able to do that, and you can just pick up those little tidbits of knowledge. That's
Yeah.
amazing. You mentioned something about the jawline or the neckline.
Yes.
Uh, so
Mhm.
I think you were referring to positioning, but I also have used a trick in the past. Like sometimes you have that swelling, like on the jowl, like in the neck swelling, and you could
Yes.
use like a towel and maybe get it wet, or use some sort of weightedness so it
Yes.
pulled back. Or I've even seen, I'm not a proponent of this, but taking ligature back here and
Mhm.
tightening so everything is looking so smooth.
A little bit more
Opposite
taut.
of my neck.
Yeah.
But do you have what were you referring to there, and what tricks do you have there?
So the tissue reducing spatula you can potentially use in that area as well.
Okay.
But I actually learned a new trick, which was very interesting. And it's kind of in along the same lines of the towel, but it's
Okay.
not going to leave the little micro indentations.
That's the issue, right?
So yeah, so this actually I was speaking to, I apologize, I don't recall the funeral director's name. If I had about 5 minutes, I could look back in my messages.
All
But
good, all good.
they shared this ingenious technique, and I didn't know why this didn't come to me before. But the use of a length of rope and then a pool noodle, and using
Oh,
a pool noodle and then the length of rope through the middle of the pool noodle, you
okay.
contour it around the neck, and that compression will help bring that down.
It's like a neck brace.
Yes, exactly. Like absolutely just like a neck brace. So I'm like, oh my gosh, that's ingenious. Why didn't we think of something like that before?
Because that's an absurd thing to think of.
Right. Yes. But it's phenomenal. And we've
Yeah.
tried it once, and I'll be darned, it worked. It
Yeah.
worked so well. Just that compression. It was wonderful.
I
So
find it hilarious that we, as in morticians, use some of the most interesting, bizarre things that they incorporate in the prep room. And just like I want to
mm,
show people, like, hey, we use this in the prep room, just to like tease, be like, what on earth are you using a pool noodle for while you're involved?
right.
Like, what are you talking about?
I will say I did not tell the person that I was checking out with what I was using that for. Um,
I'm sure you didn't.
yeah.
Oh, that's great. So give us a little bit more about your career, if you don't mind.
Oh,
I'd love to
yeah.
know how you got to where you are. Obviously, you're highly involved in the prep room. Just tell us about your
I
career and
am.
how you got to be an instructor over there.
Beautiful. So my career wasn't always just a straight path. I've actually taken a couple zigzags. It kind of looks like a lightning bolt path, if you will.
It's never
Um,
straight.
so
It's
I
never straight.
graduated back in 2001. So when the dinosaurs still roamed.
Oh, come on.
And, at that time, it was really hard to find a job in the field. And it took me almost 8 months to find a job in the Twin Cities area where I'm based.
Mhm.
And, so I finally landed a great position, was in a family owned set of funeral homes. They had 3 different locations. And I was with them for almost 12 years. It was a good time. They were pretty busy. Between the three locations, we had 7.5 directors. I say half. The half was close to retirement and didn't go on funerals as many night calls as
No,
everyone else. And
I'm all well aware of the
yes,
past employees. Trust me.
and so at that point in time, we were serving about 700 to 800 families a year. So we were fairly busy. And it was traditional funeral home. So I'd say a good 70% of the calls that we took care of were traditional services.
That's busy. That's
So
real.
it was very busy. But it was wonderful because I gained a lot of experience. And we cared for all different faiths, all different backgrounds at one of the locations.
Yeah.
And to me, that was invaluable to gain
So
that
much
experience.
experience. Oh yeah.
Wonderful. And then I took a little bit of a side turn, had some health challenges, and my mom died around the same time. So there was a little period of transition. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I had a little crisis, am I going to still do this? What should I
Yeah.
do? And I was kind of pulled into a mission, if you will,
Mhm.
and went into the donation side. So organ, tissue, and eye donation, and decided that, yes, I'm a funeral director. I wasn't always in favor of donation. In fact, when it first started, when I was a funeral director, I could not say enough negative things about it.
Because we have to
It's
deal with
challenging.
the worst of the worst, and we
Yeah,
see what
absolutely.
happens. So it
Yeah.
makes sense that funeral directors, because the families don't know what is truly happening. Uh,
Hmm.
and I think that leaves a sour taste in a lot of film directors'
Yeah,
mouths. Yeah.
absolutely. I can understand that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so from that perspective, I wanted to make it my goal, as a funeral director, to say, hey, I'm a funeral director. I do support this mission of donation. I know
Mhm.
it's challenging, but I want to be there. I want to teach you. I want to come on site. I'll come embalm with you. I'll come help you do any reconstructive processes that might need to be done so that
Yeah.
I can teach you. And the next time that you do this, it's going to be a little bit better because you're going to
Yeah.
have some of that knowledge behind you. And I think in our area, and I'm not sure, I think pretty much across the board, that funeral directors were not part of the equation when donation started. And from my perspective, if you're not part of that process, you're not included in the planning, you're kind of left out and you're not considered. So
Absolutely.
from that perspective, developing an education program or having a better education program that you can work with your funeral directors instead of against it's going to be huge. And sharing with them the knowledge so that they can be successful and provide honest feedback and honest communication with the families that they're serving, that is so important because ultimately they're the ones who are standing in front of the families at the visitation, and the families are asking why.
Yeah. And it's a hard question to answer too. So any knowledge that you
Hmm.
can get to help better answer those questions, and any tricks and tips that you have for those situations, goes a long way.
Yeah,
I remember at the beginning of my career, we had to take care of all of those cases, any donation. Now, a lot of the donation centers, they offer embalming services as a part of what they do, if you so wish. A lot of
right.
times we'll still want, no, we want to keep our embalming in house. There's no judgment on one way or the other, but
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is now an offer for a lot of these centers, which for me personally is a wonderful idea. And I've gotten nothing but good results from when I've used them in those situations. And
great.
it does save you 3 hours. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe more,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah.
And that's a valuable amount of time as a funeral director. And
Hmm.
then for me, it gives a less of a, I want to help every family, so I don't want people taking
Yeah,
it the wrong way. But it
yeah,
is
of
a
course.
very tough thing to deal with, and it is. it's an
Yeah.
unpleasant thing to deal with.
Yeah.
No one truly, I think, likes taking care of a tissue donation case because it is tough on the body. It's tough
Mhm.
emotionally or mentally as well. I
Absolutely.
like that there's so much more outreach, whether it's helping like you've done, Kelley, before, helping funeral directors, giving them
Mhm.
tactics, or taking it off their plate in some circumstances is also really nice too.
Oh, phenomenal. And
Yeah.
I like that some of those actually, the ones that I know of, all of them, have a reimbursement rate. So
Correct.
funeral directors can apply for that for services that go above and beyond a
Yes.
traditional embalming, if you will, and that they're willing to work with you, and that most of them will have a liaison. So if there is a breakdown in the process somewhere, that you have someone that you can call.
Yep.
And that part has been phenomenal. I'm glad to see that they're trying to build that up, trying to support the funeral directors, versus kind of just letting them hang out in the wind.
Funeral directors are such an integral part of the whole process, so
Hmm.
they need to be involved with it. It's just they're the next step, and they need to
Exactly.
be considered in it.
Yeah. So I've been privileged to spend a lot of that segment of my career to learn about embalming techniques, learn about areas of reconstruction, and then go and speak to other funeral directors
Yeah,
to share these techniques that I've learned that might be time saving, that might be different ideas that weren't necessarily considered. To elevate their skills and comfort. Now, if we think about, I only do this once or twice a year, I'm probably not going to be as skilled or as fast at something that I do every day. So,
absolutely.
looking at that from a different perspective, okay, if I have this knowledge, I'm able to use it more frequently, then I'm going to be a little bit more proficient at it.
Yeah,
So sharing that, and I've been really privileged to be able to share that knowledge with folks across the country.
that's a very well said point, because if you think about when students are just starting to embalm and learning how to embalm, they're taking 3 hours for a case or something like that.
Yeah.
It's similar, not the same. But if you're not doing many tissue donation cases, you're only doing one or two a year, it's going to take you longer, as opposed to someone that's doing them every single day. They probably have it down pat where it's like this step, this
Hmm.
step, this step, and they have it
Right.
down to more of a
Yeah.
system and a science. What were some of for me, that sounds like a tough job. Were you in the nitty gritty? Were you in there dissecting and things? What was your job there?
So I was actually cross trained. When I first started there, I was having conversations with families
Okay.
and asking for them to consider donation. I also was working on what's called import organs. So if an individual in our area was listed on a transplant list and an organ happened to become available that wasn't in our area, but say perhaps in Illinois,
Yeah.
I would help facilitate that to come in. And then I would also help facilitate if there was an incoming team to recover an organ here for a patient in their region. And let me tell you, there's nothing more bone chilling or getting the arms to or the hair to stand up on your arms than watching that plane take off and then watching that plane come back on flight tracker, seeing that plane land and know within 2 hours that someone's life is going to be saved. And coming from being around caring for decedents and their families
Mhm.
and having that sorrow so much,
Mhm.
seeing this beautiful gift that can come from a tragic scenario,
Right.
that was a different take for me. And it was a very different perspective for me to experience. Um, I still wanted to care for families and still wanted that aspect. So having those conversations with them was important for me. But facilitating that aspect was on a completely different level than anything I experienced as a funeral director before.
Yeah, that has to be such a touching,
Mhm.
good feeling. My cousin, who unfortunately passed away last year, he had
Mhm.
cystic fibrosis and he had two liver transplants himself.
My
So I have a very,
condolences.
thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. It was a tough one, real tough. Um, but we through that experience, you are able to see firsthand the impact that it has. And he was on the transplant list for his lungs and never got to get to the front.
Yeah.
So it's such an important thing that I know is hard for our funeral directors, but
Yeah.
it does make that big impact in
Yeah.
the lives of like those families and for those individuals. So you have to keep that in mind because a lot of times what we're doing in the best interest of our families. And if we can look
Absolutely.
at it from that way and not about the amount of work or the
Yeah.
tediousness, we can frame it as, hey, someone's life or way more than likely several people's lives were saved in this circumstance,
Yeah.
then you could be like, okay, I can do that.
Yeah. Well, and I came at it from this perspective. I had a funeral director that got very aggressive with me during a presentation at one point in time.
Oh,
Very disrespect. It happened. It's
how so?
okay.
What was he doing?
Um, just kept coming at me with different comments. Do they really know this? Do you really tell them that? How is this? How is that? And I stopped and I said, "Can I ask you a question?" And absolutely. And I said, "Okay, would you ask a family to go to a different house of worship than one that they had already told you they were going to go to?"
Never. Of course not.
Exactly. And that's what he answered. And I said, "Why would you take this decision away from them then? It is their choice. It's not
Right?
your choice. It's not my choice. It may not be what I want for myself, but it may be what they want for their loved one.
Right.
And it may provide them a sense of purpose or a sense of belonging or a sense of calmness in knowing that a part of their loved one might be going on and
Carrying
helping
out.
someone.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not my personal feelings. And,
Yeah.
I very much understand where that protecting the family is coming from.
Yeah.
100% understand that. And I would do anything for the families I serve too. But I
Absolutely.
want to make sure that I'm also giving them the opportunities to do the things that they want to do in honoring their loved ones in the way that they want to.
Yeah.
Um,
You have
so
to respect any decision that a family is going to make. That's what we're here to
that's
do.
reasonable. Yeah,
Right. That's
absolutely.
of course, yeah. But that's what we're here to do is to honor their wishes and carry out what they want for their loved one. So it doesn't
Right.
really matter what that means or what that looks like. That's what we have to do. And
Yeah.
it's literally the whole purpose of our job is to make sure
Right.
that
Right.
we carry out what they
Yeah.
want and what
Yeah.
their family wants. And
Yeah.
it's really great that you were able to do all that and it probably gave you a whole different outlook on everything that you saw from that perspective and
Yeah.
uh, dealing with a lot of funeral directors and things like that must have been I mean it got you to where you are too because then you were able to transition into
Oh my gosh.
teaching too so you
Yes.
probably know everyone now.
So I know quite a few folks,
Yeah.
not only in the upper Midwest. I used to be a member of the North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota Funeral Directors Association. I got over to Wisconsin a bit, um, an FDA a number of times. And so, yeah, I do know quite a few folks around. I have that immense pleasure of being able to connect. And I still have folks reach out, and I think that's great. I'm happy to help where I can in that
that's
aspect.
That's great.
Yeah.
I just thought of another question, and I think I know the answer, but some people are probably curious about this, like I am. So let's say I wanted to be, a donor, a tissue donor. Is there a way to stipulate only? This is an absurd question. Only like my internal organs. Um,
Great question.
that's it. That
Great
because
question.
that's a very much a funeral director question, and for our
Yes.
embalmers, probably why I'm asking that. So
Absolutely. I appreciate that.
yeah.
And that's absolutely your decision. So a couple things. It depends on the state registries. Some state registries on when you go to mark on your driver's license, if
Yeah.
you want to be a donor, some ask for each gift. So I want to be an organ donor, heart, lung, kidney. all the way down to
Oh,
bone and connective tissue, like Iowa. They're very progressive and list every single one out.
that's the way it needs to be.
It was amazing. I was so excited to see that. Now, other states, when you mark donor on your driver's license, that is first person consent. So that means that you are gifting of yourself after you no longer have brain function or your heart stops beating.
Right. Mm,
So one of the important things to do is to have a conversation with your family
yeah,
on what your wishes are. This is what I want. I want to make sure that only my heart is given. I want to make sure that only my lungs are given. I
mm,
only want to be an eye donor, and make sure that that is expressed. And also, it might not hurt to have that on a healthcare directive as well, so that
right.
you have proof in writing, and make sure that that's accessible to others. So that is technically a legal document at the time of your death, and that will be honored.
Hmm. I gotta, well, first of all, I should move to Iowa because it is the best state in the US. But that's a college joke there. But also, I guess if my family's listening, this is a legal document, right? I only want internal organs if I suddenly pass away. So you have that on the record, Kelley. If something happens to me, that's what I wish
I'll
for.
have them reach out.
But yeah, what a yeah, that's interesting. That it's
Yeah,
obviously like there's so many things that vary state to state, and that's something I was
truly.
always curious about, and I didn't really know the answer, and
Yeah.
I felt stupid asking it because I'm a funeral director.
Yeah. And just like mortuary law, every state has different laws regarding donation, and it typically falls under the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act for each individual state. So it's really going to be different state to state what is considered. But overall, once you do make that designation on your driver's license, having that conversation with your family is first and foremost the most important thing to do.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's great. So for anyone that is going through that, go ahead and list that out.
Yes.
I'd love to know. I got to get into the depths of your career. Give me a story. I want to hear. You've done a lot. You've been in a lot of different aspects. Give me one of
Yes.
those crazy stories. For our funeral directors listening, that's gonna tickle us in some sort of way.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that's a tough one. I already shared how I ripped my pants out, which that one was another a tough one. Um, you know what? I'm trying to think. Teaching has been magnanimous. And I always tell my students, I'm not afraid to make myself look like a fool so that you will learn.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and and that's true. And I apologize if my director is listening to this or will listen to this. But one of the ways that I like to engage with them is to really pull in hands-on activities and really grab their attention. So, um, in essence, when we do our musculature unit and we learn about the facial muscles and that effect on surface form, we know
Yeah.
the more we use muscles, the more we get wrinkles on our face.
Yeah.
And so I drop a pen, oops, behind the podium, and I put on like this Nacho Libre muscle mask, and I stand up, and it is so skin tight that it does look normal. I mean, it looks like muscles and it's kind of creepy looking, but I
Yeah.
move my muscles on my face and they're all like, they're enthralled. And I'm like, okay, I've got your attention. Let's talk about how these affect facial form. And
Yeah.
so these are things that I bring into the classroom. So learning doesn't always have to be boring.
No.
I want to make sure that, it's relevant, it's important, and that we're able to connect that to why we're doing certain things when we go out into the field. We're looking at these things. We might need to use tissue filler. We might need to use a mouth former because we might not have teeth on this particular decedent. So
Yeah.
looking at all those different aspects, I try and incorporate ways for them to really pay attention and stay enthralled in their learning.
That's key, and to keep it at their level and to get them engaged and to want to learn so they can use it in their future careers is
Yes.
wonderful, and that seems to be what you're doing. And
Yeah.
we love all the good stuff that you're bringing to the table. I learned a ton from you today, and I hope our other funeral directors did. And if you're looking to go to mortuary school, I mean, you got to consider University of Minnesota. Come on now, got Kelley
Woo-hoo.
teaching you. That's great. But Kelley, thanks so much for joining us today. A lot of fun, some good info, and we love all three aspects of your career meshed into one. We got a good learning experience from you today.
Beautiful. Thanks for having me, Michael. I truly appreciate this opportunity.
Of course.